By 2004, the diagnosis seemed simple. Kids were bored with the brick, so Lego fled. It built theme parks, jewelry lines, video game studios, anything to escape its plastic past. But the market spoke again, and this time the verdict was lethal. In just 2 years, revenue collapsed 40%, leaving behind nearly $1 billion in debt. The problem wasn't that the world had stopped wanting to build. The problem was that Lego had forgotten how. The answer wouldn't be found in a new venture. It was waiting in a design principle established decades earlier. A simple, interlocking piece of plastic, measuring 31.8 by 15.8 millimeters. So how did this Danish toy company turn a brick into a lifeline? By 2003, the company's catalog listed over 11,000 unique parts. This explosion of complexity was the symptom of a terminal disease, a complete loss of strategic focus. Lego was no longer a system for creative building. It was an uncoordinated collection of brands, from Galador action figures to Clicket's jewelry, that shared only a logo. The core problem wasn't just a single bad product. It was the dissolution of the company's very identity, buried under a mountain of plastic that no longer fit together into a coherent whole. This operational chaos fueled a financial hemorrhage. As debt spiraled toward $1 billion, cash was diverted from the core brick business to prop up failing ventures in theme parks, clothing, and television. Each new product line was a bet on diversification, but without a central strategy, they became isolated failures, draining capital and distracting leadership. With sales down 40% over 2 years, the math was brutal. The sprawling empire was not just failing to grow, it was actively consuming the foundation it stood on, losing money with every tick of the clock. The numbers, however, were just a scorecard for an existential crisis. Lego was weeks away from a point of no return, where its core promise, the simple creative power of the brick, would be permanently lost. The abyss was not bankruptcy alone, but total irrelevance. The bleeding had to be stopped, but a bailout wasn't the answer. The solution would come, not with a bandage, but with a cleaver. The inflection point arrived in 2004, a moment of profound cultural and strategic rupture. For the first time in its history, Lego appointed a CEO from outside the founding family, Jørgen Vig Knudstorp. His mandate was not to manage a gentle decline, but to execute a radical course correction. The playbook he deployed was immediate, decisive, and surgical. It was a masterclass in corporate triage, driven by a single clarifying question. Does this asset, this product line, this individual brick serve the core system of play? If the answer was no, it was cut. The most visible amputation was the sale of a majority stake in the Legoland theme parks. Symbolically, it was a retreat from the physical world to refocus on the imaginative one. Internally, the purge was even more systematic. A substantial portion of the product portfolio was eliminated. The workforce was restructured. And most critically, the sprawling catalog of over 11,000 unique parts, the source of the company's logistical nightmare, was aggressively culled. Thousands of specialized molds were retired, forcing designers to innovate within a simplified, more coherent system. This was not a strategy for growth. It was a strategy for survival. Every divestment, every cut, was designed to stop the financial hemorrhage and generate the cash needed to service the company's debt. More importantly, it concentrated the organization's scattered engineering and design talent back onto a single, vital objective: perfecting the brick. Selling the parks was the defibrillation. The real transformation, though, was a complete rewiring of how a product came to life. With the business stabilized, the next move was to build a moat no competitor could cross. And Lego found its most powerful weapon not in its factories, but in the basements of its most obsessive adult fans. The company systematically transformed this global community from a passive audience into a decentralized R&D department. Through open innovation portals, thousands of fan designers were submitting, voting on, and effectively market testing new set ideas. A constant stream of concepts that had already survived the harshest filter there is: real demand. This ignited a self-reinforcing flywheel. Fan-driven designs, pre-validated by the community, became a reliable pipeline for commercial hits. This engine consistently generates up to 30% of the company's annual sales from new products alone. Not minor refreshes, entirely new sets, each carrying the fingerprints of real customers before a single brick ships at scale. This isn't just innovation. It's an industrialized system for co-creating relevance with the market, ensuring the portfolio never goes stale. Every submission sharpens the company's instinct for what comes next, a feedback loop that converts raw passion into predictable revenue. To protect this core, LEGO layered on a strategic shield, premium licensed collaborations. Sets built around franchises like Star Wars and Harry Potter don't just sell. They command higher prices, fend off clones, and act as a crucial acquisition funnel, drawing new generations of builders into the wider LEGO ecosystem, where they discover the core creative system. A kid who walks in for a Millennium Falcon walks out hooked on the brick itself. This engine didn't just revive the company. It propelled LEGO into global dominance. But the brick, no matter how defensible, still had a ceiling. What LEGO built next would shatter it. The results of the pivot were not theoretical. They were immediate and undeniable. In 2005, just 1 year after the radical restructuring began, sales rebounded by a staggering 20%. This wasn't speculative growth. It was a direct reversal of the company's downward spiral. The financial bleeding stopped, and the vital signs stabilized. The company posted a pre-tax profit of $117 million, a definitive sign that the core-focused strategy was not just working, it was profitable from the outset. This initial recovery was not a temporary bounce. It was the first step in a long arc of compounding success. The disciplined focus on the brick system, amplified by smart licensing and a direct line to its fan community, created a powerful growth flywheel. By 2011, revenue had climbed to $710 million, cementing the company's return to stability. This wasn't just a recovery from near bankruptcy, it was the construction of a new, more resilient business model, piece by piece. The company was no longer just surviving. It was building an empire on the very foundation it had almost abandoned. The ultimate validation of this model arrived years later, demonstrating its profound durability. By 2023, revenue had soared to a record-breaking $9.6 billion. This market-defying performance transformed LEGO from a legacy toymaker into a dominant global brand. The strategy of cultivating its adult fanbase had paid off, creating a premium market segment that viewed the brick not as a toy, but as a creative medium. The turnaround was complete, proving that a relentless focus on a core product could build an enterprise far stronger than the sprawling, unfocused empire it replaced. But a recovery of this magnitude is never an accident. It is the result of a specific, repeatable playbook, a framework whose most important lesson is embedded not in its success, but in the first step of its crisis. LEGO's recovery provides a powerful playbook for any organization drowning in its own complexity. The framework follows a classic V-shape arc. The crisis begins with strategic drift, where diversification leads to operational chaos. The abyss is the point of maximum financial pain, a near $1 billion debt load and a 40% collapse in sales. The catalyst is a brutal, clarifying decision to divest non-core assets. This enables the pivot, a ruthless re-engineering of the core business, shortening development cycles and accelerating what works. The final resurrection is not just survival, but compounding value built on a rediscovered identity, culminating in a $9.6 billion enterprise. The mechanics of this turnaround are transferable. First, identify and surgically remove assets that consume capital and distract leadership. Use the proceeds not just for survival, but to reinvest in the core value proposition. Second, shorten the feedback loop between product development and the end user. Compressing the cycle from years to months forces market discipline and kills speculative projects before they can drain resources. Finally, turn your most loyal customers into co-creators. By involving fans in the design process, you de-risk innovation and build a self-reinforcing community around your product. This is the anti-diversification doctrine. It argues that when a brand's identity becomes diluted, the only path forward is to narrow the focus back to the single, unkillable idea that made it essential in the first place. The lesson is not to fear expansion, but to fear expansion that obscures your purpose. it forces a final, critical question. What part of your organization is your theme park distraction, and does it survive an honest audit?
Learn the next winning strategy.